gas out of the country, so that because they get a higher price for it in other countries. So this just shows you kind of the infrastructure close in the Northeast.
And those have received federal approval for exportation?
Some of them have, not all of them. The 3 in Boston have not yet received approval. The one down Cove Point off of Maryland and Chesapeake Bay has received approval and has started construction. And there's active civil disobedience going on to stop that project as well. So, and then coming even closer to home, this is what it looks like in our own backyard. So what we're going to be talking about mostly today is the Crestwood facility there on Seneca Lake, just north of Watkins Glen. And it's fed by the Dominion pipeline, which is in purple there, that runs through Dryden. That is a big pipeline. That's an interstate pipeline, and that is a very important pipeline to the industry. They move tons and tons of gas through there, and it's a very high pressure line, and they are actually talking about right now, there's an application into the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to increase the amount of gas that's flowing through that pipeline. So you'll see off of the Dominion pipeline down here close to the bottom, there's a little blue line that goes up. That's the Arlington pipeline. That pipeline is solely used to feed Crestwood, the storage facility there. So it goes both directions. It goes in and out through. That's a bi-directional pipeline. Some of these pipelines are only single directional, and some of them are bi-directional. And Arlington is a bi-directional pipeline.
When was that pipeline put in?
I don't actually know when that pipeline was put in. They have been storing methane gas and liquid propane gas on Seneca Lake for several years. I think they started in 2006, but don't quote me on that. I don't have that actually in my notes. So, but they don't store a lot. It's actually pretty low quantity, and we'll get into that in a second. Crestwood Midstream. This is the name of the operation there on Seneca Lake, and this is a picture of what it looks like. The majority of this infrastructure that you're seeing here, and the buildings and everything, is actually not related to gas storage at all. This is related to salt mining. Okay, because this is an active salt mine. It has been a salt mine for a long time, run by U.S. Salt. There's a lot of salt caverns underneath there, and they're pulling salt out like crazy. And what they, let me look at I want to look at my notes, make sure I don't miss anything. So in 2013, Crestwood merged with a company called Energy LP. And Energy LP owned this facility. Before that, it's 600 acres, and Crestwood purchased this facility for the stated goal, and this is on their website, of transforming the Finger Lakes region into the gas storage and transportation hub for the Northeast. So this is their intention. This is what they want to do. And this is why we're concerned.
The Finger Lakes region, not exclusive to Seneca. There are salt
correct.
Facilities underneath Cayuga.
Right. They're starting at Seneca Lake, right? So that's an important point. Thank you, Joanne. So currently they're storing approximately 1.5 billion cubic feet of methane compressed natural gas. There's a difference between compressed natural gas and liquefied natural gas. Liquefied natural gas has to be frozen. It's a cryogenic, never say that word right, process of freezing the gas, and they use that when they want to transport it by ship. That is the only way to actually transport this gas other than through pipeline. So compressed natural gas is they compress it down so they can control it. They can also get more gas into one area. So it's under high pressure, but it's not liquefied. They recently received approval by FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, to expand to 2 billion cubic feet, which doesn't sound like a heck of a lot. I mean, it's just a little bit more than what they're storing now when you look at it to scale here on the side of the slide here. But on their website, they state their intentions to store 10 billion cubic feet of methane in the salt caverns of Seneca Lake. And you can see just by the scale how much more that is. That's a huge amount of gas. And then they also reference, as Joanne said, expanding to other salt caverns in the Finger Lakes, like Cayuga Lake. So this is the beginning. This is why it's so important for us to stop it now, because it's just starting here, and they have intentions of really turning this into an industrial zone. So talking about the risks that we face with this project and things that we're concerned about, methane and brine leakage from the caverns. The caverns are natural formations, and they have fissures and they have cracks. And we know right now that there is salt leaking from the caverns into the lake. The Seneca Lake has the highest salinity of any lake in the Finger Lakes, and a lot of it is because of these salt caverns. And so what we're looking at is, instead of having, or in addition to having brine and salt leaking into the lake, we're also looking at now having methane leaking into the lake, which could be a big problem. And of course, explosions and catastrophic accidents are always a concern. While they are rare, they do happen. There have been 11 such accidents across the United States in underground storage facilities, and they have resulted in entire towns being evacuated, and people getting killed, and their houses just like totally blowing up. And so, you know, that is always a problem. It also creates a terrorist target. So if you can imagine having 2 billion cubic feet of this natural gas, it's highly explosive, highly volatile, and it basically has a chain link fence around it. I mean, seriously, I could climb that.
A chain link fence across the front, it actually doesn't surround.
Oh, right, exactly. It doesn't even surround the facility. It's blocking the entrance and the gates, but it doesn't go even all the way around the facility. And there's no security to speak of that is around the perimeter. So it's a huge target.
The other thing is, every salt mine facility that has been used for gas storage in the United States has suffered failure. All of them have failed.
Right.
Most recently, it was Bayou-Corn, Louisiana, 3 years ago. The salt mine facility failed. They don't know why it failed. Created a sinkhole. The entire town of 350 people was evacuated. They have never returned. And that facility is still under failure, and they don't know how to control it.
They don't know how to control it, and that particular facility now has resulted in a 22-acre sinkhole, and it's growing.
The facility has the capacity to level a significant amount of land if it were to explode, and it would work if they were to shoot a bomb. That's very frightening to know that these facilities are allowed in the United States, and that is not a violation of homeland security. These are obsolete facilities.
Right. And in the notes that we're going to send out, we're actually going to send some YouTube video links where you can take a look at some of the accidents that have occurred where people have actually videotaped what has happened. There's one at Bayou-Corn. There's one in Hutchinson, Kansas, where in the middle of the night, 7 miles from the gas storage facility, there was an explosion that occurred in the middle of this town, and it actually took out entire buildings from the explosion. It was 7 miles from the facility, so the gas had actually migrated that far underground, and then it hit an electrical line underneath, which sparked it and exploded. So the impacts to tourism and the wine industry economy is also very important, and I just want to make sure that I want to take a look at this because I have numbers here.
New York State is the 3rd largest provider of food for this country.
Right.
So if you know that as a terrorist, and then you know that gas is in the heart of the breadbasket, that's a very substantial
Not to mention yogurt.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So, and more importantly, wine.
I'll agree with that. I know you're more concerned with you.
So New York State, just to give you some numbers and some an idea of what we're talking about, the scale of impact of on the economy, or potential impact, is the wine industry contributes $4.8 billion, billion with a B, dollars to our economy annually. Okay, and that's really important. It provides 25,000 full-time jobs, good jobs, right? Those are good jobs, and it pays over $408 million in taxes a year. So $408 million in taxes go into our state government from the wine industry. It's really important to think about that, and that is central around Seneca Lake. Seneca Lake, the size of the lake and the way that it's situated creates its own microclimate, and it's perfect for growing grapes. And so it's really come into its own in the past couple of years. In last year, it was named by Sherman's Travel as the #1 lake vacation spot in the world. Not in the country, not in New York, but in the world. So this is what we have at risk here. And I'm just going to quickly...
Actually, in the Finger Lakes alone, because I researched this as well, the portion of impact to the wine industry would be 3.8 billion.
Right.
So, by far, the largest proportion of the wine revenues is right here.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Great point.
Other countries that have now invested in the Finger Lakes region to produce
Right.
French like our wine.
Yes.
The French love our wine. In fact, several French, and I'm not a wine connoisseur, so forgive me, I don't know their names, but I've talked to people that do know this stuff, and they say that the big French wine producers are now coming to the Finger Lakes and buying property here and setting up shop because of the great conditions. And I skipped over the contaminated drinking water. This is a really important point I shouldn't have skipped over. Seneca Lake provides drinking water for 100,000 people. And currently, Joanne said that all of these salt caverns have failed. These gas storage have failed in some way, shape, or fashion. The interesting thing is none of those provided drinking water. So none of those facilities have provide drinking water to anyone. And the Seneca Lake is the first one that has been proposed that actually provides drinking water to anyone, and it provides drinking water to over 100,000 people. So what are those folks going to do if all of a sudden Seneca Lake is full of brine and it is way too salty for us to have as drinking water? Removing salt from water is really expensive, and we don't want to get into into something where we have to do that. And then, of course, there's the expansion of hydrofracking and climate change, which are state and national issues. They're less local, but very important. The expansion of hydrofracking. So we're basically creating a place to store fracked gas. And fracked gas right now is being produced at incredible rates in the state of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia, and they really just don't have any place to store all this gas that they're creating. That's why they want to create these gas storage facilities. And the reason that the industry wants to do that is they want to be able to control the price, right? So it's similar to OPEC. If you think about how OPEC controls the oil prices, they store oil and then they release it when they want to. And they cut back on how much they're producing, and they control the price that way. That's what the industry wants to be able to do with natural gas. Currently, the way they're set up, they can't really do that, and that's why the price is staying so low. They also want to have a way to, as I said before, move it out of the country for export. And climate change, I touched on that at the beginning. Climate change is really important. If we burn this gas, if we continue to burn this gas, we're going to burn out our planet. Right? That's been shown through bukus of science, and And that's something we really have to think about. It's time for us to go to renewables. We need to stop investing in this fossil fuel infrastructure.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How do the people who produce the salt justify what they're doing?
That produce the salt?
Salt. I mean, I know. I mean, I think I know, but I don't know anything.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Salt.
Right.
I mean, they feel like they're producing a good product.
Right.
And what are the uses of that? According to them,
right.
we're talking about biofuel. According to them, you know, what difference are they making by producing the salt?
So the salt is that's being produced there mostly, I think, is used for table salt, and also for salt that goes on the roads and other processes. there are a lot of processes that require salt, like cheese making and that sort of thing. And salt has been produced in the Finger Lakes for 100 years, at least 100 years, maybe longer. And so that is although that is also creating problems on the lake, it's less of an issue than the gas storage. So I mean, even the salt mining there is an impact to the environment. So
because in the West, it's a totally different situation in the winter.
Right.
I mean, there are other organic, natural ways to get rid of that smell. I know the sun doesn't shine here a lot.
And that's an issue that we have to work on locally and statewide to stop the use of salt on the road. It's absolutely the wrong way to go.
Yeah. That is true, and it's causing problems with runoff, and it is not good for native plants. And
this is about money. This is not about energy. This is about money. When the salt companies say, "Hey, we've extracted our salt and there's an empty cavern," another industry said, "Hey, it's a good idea that we use that empty space to store methane and other hydrocarbons," and the government said, "Hey, as long as you pay us a permit fee, we're good with it." And we're saying, "Oh no, that is a disaster waiting to happen, and here's all the proof that it's already happened and it's going to happen here, and let it."
So there will be some adverse impacts, even if everything works as planned, and by some miracle there are no accidents, right? So some things that we need to think about is the transformation of the area. So right now we're an agriculture, wine industry, yogurt making, tourism type of area, and if this comes to pass, is that we become basically the gas station for the Northeast, then this is actually what's going to happen. Commodity industries, just like because we grow grapes, we have wine. If we store gas, we will have fertilizer companies. We will have plastic manufacturers. We will have vinyl manufacturers. We will have these companies that come in, these manufacturing companies that come in that need natural gas in order to operate. And they will set up shop here.
Natural gas is a feedstock for plastics and for fertilizers and for fertilizer bombs. So those companies look for vast storage of methane. They also look for vast quantities of fresh water because that is necessary to also produce those products. And in producing those products, there are toxins in the air and water that result. This is a cause and effect transformation.
Right, absolutely. And these are the results of that. We have air quality impacts. You have cancer zones. Last year, the NRDC did a comprehensive study of cancer zones throughout the United States. They looked at 42 different areas, and many of those areas were not from industrial accidents, but from business as usual, and because of the toxins that were going into the air. And then cumulative impacts. The government tends not to study cumulative impacts because they say it's hard, right? And it is hard. And it's from a scientific perspective, you have to look at things over time. You can't just look at things like today, like this one project, and what is this one project going to do? So if we look at the cumulative impacts of the compressor stations, the fertilizer companies, the plastic manufacturers, all of those things, what we end up with is an area where the people that can move will move, right? They won't stay here. Because it's not a place that's conducive to where we want to be. We love it here in the Finger Lakes because of what we have. Well, if that's gone, we're also going to be gone. And then you're left with the people that don't have the means to move, right? So they tend to be low-income folks, people that are already disenfranchised and already taken advantage of by government and industry. So, you know, the cumulative impacts can be huge of this whole thing happening. And finally, I want to end with how you can get involved, and then we'll go into discussion.
I want you to play the clip on the compressor station.
I don't have it up here. We weren't
The
familiar.
YouTube thing, you don't have that?
No.
If you go to
But-
the listserv that you sent out last night, you might
Yes.
be able to click it on.
Right, but I don't want to take time away from that. Well, the clip, the link for the compressor station, there's videos that show what compressor stations look like and what gas storage facilities look like, and those links will be in the notes that we sent out, and everything. But it'll take a little while to set that up, so I don't want to get into that. Mary.
This is a clarification sort of question. The gas that's in these salt caverns, there's no tanks or anything holding
No.
it, it's just in the,
Right.
just against the rock.
Right. So that, yeah, that's a great question. And no, there's nothing. They're not lined. So there are some facilities, underground facilities. They tend to be made out of stone, or they tend to be made from shale, where they actually go in and they hollow out a piece of shale or a piece of rock, and then they line it and store gas that way through underground storage. Salt caverns, they believe, have a natural sealing ability, and that there won't be leakage, right? But that has been proved over and over again not to be true. So, and actually the caverns that they're talking about at Seneca Lake, they have one cavern that they have been successfully storing gas in for a while, and it seems to be working. They want to join that to another cavern that is next to it, and they'll actually create an adjoining. They'll have to go in and take out some of the salt at the top and join them together so that they can only have one injection point, which is cheaper. And then they will, that second cavern has a history of leaking. It already has a history of leaking brine. And the way that they do this is, and I don't know all the technical stuff, and one of the things that you can do how you can get involved is continue to educate yourself. Go to these two websites. There's a lot of information on there about how it works. But they basically inject brine into the caverns to pressurize the gas. So they'll put the gas in, and then they put brine in to pressurize the gas as well. So it's a mixture of brine and gas. And then when they pull it out, it's wet gas. It's what they call wet gas. And they have to, it has to go through a process of removing the water from the gas before they can then send it out to be used.
What
So-
do they do with the residue that they get from extracting the water from the gas?
I'm sorry?
What happens to the residue
It's a
from
brine pond.
the brine?
Oh, right. It goes into usually brine tanks, and then it's taken away to some sort of wastewater facility. So they have these brine tanks that are outside of the salt caverns.
So they don't pull the salt out of it for processing it?
No, they don't. It goes to a wastewater facility.
But salt is not easily handled by waste processing plants.
Absolutely.
So
It's just like
So-
fracking fluid, and the brine fluids and they may also spread it on the roads.
They do.
Uh,
That's one of the
things they
ways
do
that
with it.
they-
Is
which
they
is
spread it.
illegal.
in some areas.
It is illegal in Tompkins County to spread brine on county and town roads. We cannot control state roads, so they are spreading brine on state roads in Tompkins County.
Okay.
How long has it been illegal?
I'm sorry?
How long has it been illegal?
2 years?
I think 2 years. I think 2 years. So I just want to go through this really quickly, and we'll get back to discussion because it's the last slide. And so other things that you can do to get involved, call Governor Cuomo, ask him to take all measures possible to stop this dangerous project. You know, this is really kind of out of the state's hands, but enough people calling Cuomo, he'll call somebody, right? And as well, we can call Schumer and Gillibrand, and their numbers are up here. Ask them to have FERC withdraw its approval. They do have the power to do this. They can say, this is my state, I want more study to happen, I want something more to happen. They can actually ask FERC to withdraw its approval and make it a different process. You can also donate money. There are two different groups here. There's Gas Grease Seneca, which is more about education and lobbying and going through the typical political, legal means of doing things. Then there's another group called We Are Seneca Lake that's run by the Seneca Lake Defenders, and it is a civil disobedience group. And we are the ones that are blockading. We are the ones that are doing flash mobs and actions, and so we need money to cover the fines and expenses related to civil disobedience. So you can donate there. You can also join us. Join the Seneca Lake Defenders. Joanne and I are members. There's several other people here that have done this. Carl Fitzgay has joined us at one of the demonstrations. So, if you're in a position where you can go and be part of some of the actions, that'd be great. And you don't have to get arrested. That's the first thing I want to say. You don't have to be part of the group that gets arrested. You can be there as a support person. You can be there as a cheerleader. You can be there just as moral support. And all of those things are also needed. So that was the end of our presentation. Joanne, do you want to add anything?
I do. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, is the top approving entity for our government. All other avenues of legal intervention have been exhausted. We lost. The attorney, who's Deborah Goldberg, who actually helped us get our van in driving and won three times in a row to keep our van. I asked her about this, and she said to me, the only time that any project has ever been stopped, moved, or slowed down after FERC has approved it is through outrage of the public, through civil disobedience. So that is why we're taking these steps. The other thing is that FERC has not considered the actual geology of this facility, of these mines, which have already faced collapse. The ceiling fell in. They're not considering that information. That would be catastrophic.
Has there been any...
I'm sorry, so why don't we raise our hands to speak, because I think there's a lot that is going on. So I have Fran, and then I have Swimming, and then David.
So tell us, you sent pictures out of these communities of the future that are going to be fenced. So tell us more about that.
Well,
what that plan is, what that's
I actually used to live in what's termed as a fence line community, which is where an industry moves in and they fence out the community, and you are exposed to the emissions of producing whatever they are producing. And in mine, it happened to be in Charleston, South Carolina, and if you've ever been there, the stench in the air will drive you mad. It's not just stench. Those are dioxins. Those are poisonous things that are allowed to poison the public. And people who cannot tolerate that succumb to those emissions. They get very sick. That costs their family. They move to poverty, and they either stay in poverty or they leave. Fortunately, I was there as part of a military family because there is a station there for the U.S. Navy. So I only spent 18 months there. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. Why anybody would want to be a tourist in South Carolina, and Charleston in particular, is I don't understand that.
They don't know.
So people who are coming to the Finger Lakes, if they experience what you would experience as what's called a blowdown, if you looked on your email last night, I sent a video of what's called a blowdown. That happened 284 times to that family and that community. It is like the earth opened up and the gates of hell screamed. I would experience that one time and I would leave. Because for me, I could not tolerate that, and I would not expose my family, my animals, to that menace. You have to have blowdowns, you have to have pipelines, and you have to have compressor stations in order to use this type of fossil fuel.
And a blowdown, although the industry doesn't like for it to happen because it actually wastes some of the gas, and they don't like to do that, that costs them money. It's a normal thing that happens. It's not like that's an accident.
Right.
That's a normal course of business.
What is it? What is
A
it?
blowdown is where there's too much pressure in the system,
Yeah.
and they have to release the pressure. And so they actually open valves and they let some of the gas out, right? And sometimes they flare that gas, and sometimes they don't. And methane gas, as I said, is very, very light, so it dissipates in the air really fast. And but the sound around these blowdowns is incredible.
And
It
the
is.
smell.
It's like a jet engine just landed on top of your house. I mean, it's really, really loud, and the smell from this is really bad as well. And the toxins are going into the air. And they put these facilities. They legally, in the state of New York, they can put a compressor station within 2,000 feet of a home or a business. So they're fairly close. I mean, they're not that far away from homes and schools and that sort of
So
thing.
you can hear a blowdown for more than a mile
Right.
from the location of where it's originating from. And in Minisink, New York, and in Windsor, New York, where 2 compressor stations were built last year and a year and a half ago, people are leaving. Because once they are permitted, they seek a variance from FERC to enhance those stations. And they receive those permits very, very easily. So again, this has already started in New York. Those people who say we're not fracking in New York, you're wrong. Because we are being fracked by pipeline, by compressor station. And people are actually not aware that methane gas, fracked gas from Pennsylvania or from the Marcellus Shale Formation has a content of radon that is extremely high. And when you burn it, you are being exposed to radon gas. The industry is not going to tell you those things because then you wouldn't want to use their product.
So
I was just going to ask, if this is so serious, how about the winemakers? You know, like, do they have their own group where they're working, you know, like, or are they part of the Defenders of the Lake, or what is it? They must have some group that's trying to fight
they are
this.
involved with, Gas Free Seneca has done a very good job over the last 4 years in telling everybody about what happens underground or what could happen to the water. They really, when you tell somebody who has lived in upstate New York all of their life and has never been someplace else that this could industrialize your region, they don't understand what that means. They don't understand what a blowdown is. They don't understand what polluted air means, and they don't understand what a fence line community is because they have never experienced it. So that terminology does not calculate in a farmer's mind. I'm a farmer, I know this. So we have to reach across a border that is huge right now and tell these people, either you stand up now or you're not going to have a farm to produce food. Because I buy food from Serendipity Farms. I buy organic blueberries there, which is right next to this facility. I'm not going to be buying that food and driving an hour if this is what it's going to be surrounded by. The other thing is this facility, even as it is, in my opinion, should be responsibly dismantled as soon as possible. We are walking on a time bomb here.
It's already storing more gas than what, but to really answer your question, the winemakers are very much involved with Gas-Free Seneca. We are slowly getting them to accept, and what we believe is absolutely factual and true is that we have to do civil disobedience now to stop this. The winemakers and business owners of Watkins Glen are sort of scared of this civil disobedience thing. They think that they'll be seen as radicals. They think that they'll be, that they may lose business over that, and so they've been somewhat reluctant, although they are starting to come around. So they've got too fast, and we're getting there with them. And they have been very supportive in the last 6 months of the Seneca Lake Defenders, both from a financial perspective and from a publicity PR perspective, although most of them are still staying in the background. David.
Michael Vincent's my name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought
right.
your name was David.
That's quite all right.
I don't know where I got that. Sorry.
Your presentation and the preliminary or preparatory email I was very happy to receive. So thank you for all the energy and you're demonstrating that we have the power.
We absolutely
And I
have.
really want us to hear that. You bring me back to 12 years old. A little boy who grew up without a car, and his new playmate or classmate from Brooklyn and his family invite me to go on vacation with them to the Rainbow Cove Motel on Seneca Lake. All right. From Staten Island, that has the highest cancer rate of New York City because of what's being blown over the Kilvan Cove, a little river. Cove in Dutch means river, or Kil in Dutch means river. We have the highest cancer rate in Staten Island. We have one of the highest asthma rates when you talk about children, and that's what was, if you can go back to the FUSIT listserv, and it's only a minute and 15 seconds about what it looks like and the vicinity and the noise. Yes. I need a miracle here, but you can hear the noise just of the actual operation right next to the family, and nothing separating. And that's the same thing with Staten Island and Jersey, and what you smell is sulfur. I know a lot of people up here are familiar with sulfur in the drinking water, but if you smell it in the air, it's horrible. Now, the point that I want to really help us, or I'd like to ask you about, we grew up in a generation, or generations, either or, and if we don't do this, we get punished like this, and so winemakers are feeling that they'll get maybe hurt, they're afraid. So we have to shift from being afraid and fearful to loving ourselves and being free. Is there a cost analysis of new money? And you focused on the money. It's all about money. Right. And the Rockefellers did do a good thing by disinvesting. We have to see if that's a boulder in the pond or just a little ripple around the edge.
Right.
Is there a cost analysis if this didn't go through? If we put the money that even FERC would give to this kind of operation into solar, into wind, I've come back for a sustainable energy degree in converting methane from cow manure and what the Chinese have been done for 100 years. If the people had a choice of seeing where money could be invested for new money and new technology available, then that's where choices can be made. Otherwise, people are pushed this way instead of a united front this way.
In the protests, many of them at the gates of the facility at Seneca Lake, there are signs that say renewable energy now. We are saying no to one thing that's devastating, and we know that it's going to be, to something that we know is creating far more jobs in the clean energy field than the fossil fuel is producing. That is a factual thing that's coming out of the Department of Energy. By investing in fossil fuels, we are actually taking away jobs from people who actually need them. The problem is that our politicians are listening to the industries that have been funding them for decades, and they're not listening to the renewable energy field. And that is where we are.
That's absolutely true. And to answer your questions, there are cost analysis of this specific project. The costing information about what Crestwood and the federal government, because they do get subsidized by the federal government, are spending to enhance this facility is considered proprietary information, and they won't share it. So we don't have an exact idea of how much money they're putting into it. But there are other infrastructure build-out projects locally that we are looking at. There's a proposed pipeline through Dryden. It's a distribution line, not a transmission line, but a distribution line that's proposed down West Dryden Road. And we did actually get out of NYSEG that they think that that's going to cost around $10 million. So what we have done with that figure is take that $10 million figure and transform that into what would happen if you put that $10 million into renewable energy in our community. And we are actively working on that through a group called the Solutions Project and Sustainable Tompkins. And so that's something that is very important, and absolutely we need to do more of it.
Well, the only suggestion I make, or one of the suggestions, if you can just have a fact sheet and maybe do it up every 2 weeks, and then give it to merchants and greet them like that. And then these merchants, and we don't want, what the outsiders are doing to all of us around the whole country on anything, is dividing what already is.
Yes.
And that's where fear is. Love always unites, fear always fragments. But a fact sheet is how we got Bernadette Devlin's daughter out of prison, wrongly incarcerated and pregnant. And every 2 weeks, we can't get a degree in a day's demonstration. We can't get a master's or an undergrad in 1 year. We'd have to go a couple of years. So it's eases that they can take it home and look at it at the dining table.
That's the
every 2 weeks, if you can start giving little by little. Knowledge is power.
Yes.
And the first thing you put on it, we are the power, we are the wealth, they're filthy rich. Let's keep our neighborhood clean.
Right.
And those are the things that we need when we approach our elected officials. You need numbers, because that's all they will respond to.
Right.
And when you say you're exchanging one industry for another and there's a net loss across the board, they need to pay attention to that. Jim?
Wait, Martha was next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Martha, you had anything? No.
Judy.
Judy was next. And then
Well, my concern is, I'm 72, so from as far ago as I can remember, I lived in Colorado. The town that I lived in was built on a coal mining site. And one of the biggest employers was Dow Chemical, which was located in a place called Rocky Flats. And they just buried their waste under the ground.
Yes.
I don't know how long it took me or other people to realize that. More than 10 years ago, when my father was still alive, and I just mentioned one day something about Dow Chemical in Rocky Flats. Oh my gosh. My father looked at me and he said, but look how many people they have employed. And it was, I knew that. It was a fact. It employed a lot of my family. But my question is to you.
They didn't employ them, they used them.
Well, okay, fine. I'm a linguist, I understand that. And just listen. Okay? Wait until I'm done?
Yes.
I don't think so. We didn't do it to her. But anyway.
It's the Italian.
No, I'm Italian.
I know, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, my point is, where are people going to go? Every time you talk about something, you say people are going to leave and they're going to move away. My question to you is, where are they going to go?
Well, we actually went to Vermont 3 months ago to look for another place to live.
Yeah, but that's the Northeast.
Uh-huh.
I mean, there's a whole part of the country across the Mississippi.
You know where I'm not going? To Wyoming, to Colorado, to Texas, to Pennsylvania, to New Mexico, to Arkansas. I'm not going to.
Put it on the fact sheet. You know, I mean, these are the kinds of positive things. And I agree. Fear is what divides us all. If you say there's a fear of terrorism, I mean, you blocked people. You know,
it is a fact, though.
What?
It's a fact.
Well, it is, but it isn't everything.
No,
I mean,
it
there's
isn't.
enough fear to go around.
Right.
But I think, you know, I'm an educator, and I think it's a matter of educating people. Like Michael says, you know, I mean, we're smart. We can do this, educating people, you know, in a civil way. And then, you know, we'll accent the positive, and we just don't worry about, I mean, give facts. I agree. When I was in Italy, I had a friend who was a feminist, who was a good mentor to me, and she said, you don't present an argument ever without having the facts. No one will listen to you. No one will listen to you. You're absolutely right.
Right.
The problem that we're having is the facts that we present are very uncomfortable to me.
So it's uncomfortable.
And when people get uncomfortable, they shut down, they don't engage, and they don't want to deal with it. I'm asking you to come out of your comfort zone, just like I had to, just like we had to, and face this, because we really are at the brink here. That is where we are.
Jim.
Couple points, couple questions. One first question is there any movement at the federal level to sue FERC on the regulatory process, review process? Because without hitting the head, you're never going to get too far on this whole process, because it will continue. I mean, FERC has been doing this for decades, and there's a psychologist who's oblivious. Journalism today is not what journalism was 40 years ago, and that's unfortunate.
Absolutely true.
Well, one of the reasons is because the oil and gas industry, the fossil fuel industry, does control the media. So they're not going to let you know that there's radon in the gas, and they're not going to let you know. They're not going to let you know the cause and effects that must take place when this industry comes into an area that's so far virgin from it. So there are some entities that Gas Free Seneca and actually Jeremy Alderson has a petition online for people to sign to ask Lieutenant or Schneiderman, who's our Attorney General, to sue FERC because they are not considering the science, the facts here prior to their approval. That takes a long, long time. If this compressor station is delivered to that site and it goes up, we're not going to be shutting that off. So that's why I am at the point where I am willing to risk my freedom to stop that, because I have never seen a compressor station stopped and dismantled. Never. It's just never happened.
So we have seen them stopped. We have seen them stopped in areas where people have stood up against them, and we're seeing this happen with the Keystone Pipeline. Before they begin. Once they're in place, it's very difficult. So there are entities working. That's one of them. We're trying to get the New York State Attorney General to go after FERC. Quite honestly, that's a long shot. That's probably not going to happen, but it's a good political media thing to do. Behind the scenes, we're working with Earth Justice. We have secured Earth Justice as an attorney for Gas Free Seneca, and they were able to stop the liquid propane and butane storage from coming in through legal means in the state of New York. So they were really concentrating, because the butane and propane, and I'm not going to go into all of this, but the butane and propane come in on trucks, so that's controlled by the state government. Anything coming in on pipelines, controlled by the federal government. So the butane and propane project at this point has been halted, and Earth Justice was instrumental in getting that done. And they are just now switching over because, quite honestly, this methane storage caught us by surprise. We didn't even know that they had applied for this. It had been done all in secret. And on the day that the state announced that they were putting a halt to the propane and butane storage at Seneca, FERC announced the approval for the methane storage to move forward. So all they did was switch, right? They said, okay, no propane, butane, we'll now do methane. And so Earth Justice is just now coming up to speed on that, and we hope that there might be some actions there. Quite honestly, it's going to be very hard because everything that FERC is doing is legal and has been given the power by our Congress. So in order for changes to be made to the FERC process, we actually have to have laws passed. That's really hard.
FERC only gets their money through permitting, and if they don't approve projects, they don't get their funding. So why would they not approve a project even if they knew it was bad? That's what their history is.
They get a fee from that.
Yes,
Yes.
they have never not approved a project, actually one. They did not approve one project in the history of FERC, which is actually about 38 years now.
Hold on one second.
Just want to know the relationship with the state environmental review process is to this. Is it?
So the state has no authority at all in this project. In fact, the DEC released a statement the day after this was approved, saying that they didn't know anything about it and they don't support it, right? But they have no power. So the state has actually no power. This is all controlled by the federal government.
So FERC is, we're dead out of luck if FERC gives its rubber stamp on something.
They already
The
have.
state can't.
Right, the state has no jurisdiction.
The state could step in and
No.
say,
Unfortunately, the state has, the only thing that they potentially could do is if Schneiderman did say, I think that there's some sort of irregularity here, and so that Schneiderman could request an injunction against the federal government to stop the project. So they could request an injunction. Again, the likelihood of that happening is pretty low because Schneiderman is also a politician, and the political stance right now, even for the Democratic Party, is that they support natural gas. So it's not necessarily going to be politically good for Schneiderman to step in and say anything against natural gas. So, can we go with Martha real quick because she hasn't said anything?
I'm wondering what your view is of the when we get out there, or you get out there and protest at the gates, go to jail or not, or support that action, who does that affect?
Right.
What are we accomplishing by doing
What's the
that?
point? Right. So the biggest point in having civil disobedience and doing the blockades is to get the media involved, and it's all about the media.
Mm-hmm.
We are and to bring attention to what we're doing, and to also advertise to the companies that we're not going to stand for this, right? So there's a few things. We want to cost them money. We want to disrupt their operations. We want to make them look bad in the media, and that sort of thing. So are we actually going to stop their operations with our civil disobedience? Probably not. I mean, we're going to blockade, they're going to come, they're going to arrest people, then the trucks are going to go through, right? But you get the word out and you get the information out there. So just so everyone knows, if you're interested in participating in the blockades, if you're willing to be what we call in the red zone, and the red zone means you're willing to be arrested, we are very, very organized. Right, so everything is is orchestrated, right down to the cops know we're there. We've had discussions with the cops. The cops know what we're going to do. We know what they're going to do. It's a violation. It's not a crime, so it doesn't go on your record. They basically take you down to the courthouse in Watkins Glen. They write you a little ticket, a court appearance. You have to go to court then. You pay a fine. If you choose not to pay the fine, then it's 15 days in jail, but you don't have to do the 15 days in jail. You can pay the fine, which is $370, which is paid for by the Seneca Lake defenders. So there's no money out of your pocket, right? So, so the charges that you can be charged with are disorderly conduct and trespass. They're both violations, not crimes. So that's important.
When you say the media, is that anybody besides NPR and PBS?
Yeah, we've had actually a lot of local media support. We did have a spot on Democracy Now! I don't know if anyone saw it or heard it. On October 25th, they covered our blockade on Democracy Now! That was very exciting for us. And we've also had the Elmira TV station covering us. We've had the YNN TV station here locally in Ithaca. What is it? ENY. That's the Elmira station. We also had B&G there out of Binghamton.
The local papers.
Right, all the local papers.
And they're continuing to be interested in this.
Right.
They are asked to be called when we have an action so that they can cover it. And we have been live streaming all over the world and getting responses when we are at the site.
The NY23 blog also has posted things on the Seneca.
That's very great.
A lot of people that don't know all the particulars might just see it as, and I'm willing to do this too, but might just see it as we're a bunch of extremists, you know, after all, this is going to create jobs, and these people just are against it. But it seems like in the, when I was talking about the winemakers, if they, vintners, whatever, it's easier to say winemakers.
Yeah, it is.
If they were there, you know, with their arms out or something, you know, and to embrace, to save their lake, I mean, you know, it seems like that would really carry on the news around the country, maybe around the world, at least places like France, because other people are buying. But I mean, it might make an impact. We're here to protect this lake and to protect our way of life. And I mean, I was just thinking they might have, you know, a media presence that would make a little bit more of an impact, because we want this agricultural way of life. We want this, and then they could run how much, the statistics of how much they bring in, you know, and they want this way of life and they don't want it impacted or endangered.
Right.
I was just thinking, the winemakers, it seems like would really maybe sell that to the media.
And we're working on it. We really are working on that.
And if you are a customer, please call them and say, I'm your customer, and I want you to keep producing wine.
I know there's two major, at least, well, there's one major that I happen to be getting wine from. Heron Hill is very active in this pushing back. I don't know how much it would do, as you suggest, but I can write them a letter.
That would be great.
That would be great. Hunt Hill has been
is another
very...
Hazlitt, who's been there since 1850, working on 6 generations.
Damiani
Damiani is very outspoken.
Right.
And the problem is right now is their busiest season.
Oh,
Right.
sure.
They're
And it's
extremely busy.
in conflict with what they're actually doing.
We're getting close to the time when we should wrap up, but I wanted to mention, you talked about this political action, but we also can act as consumers and as producers. And I wanted to ask one question and make two other things. One, my question is, would it be possible not to divest from fossil fuels, but to purchase shares in this company and appear at their meeting in order to bring it home to them that this is not just about this area, it's about their company? So that's one question. The other point is that as consumers, we can have an effect by our own, the way we allocate our own money in our own houses. But this house, this church, Next week, we're going to continue this theme with a discussion of how we're spending our money at this church and whether we could reduce energy consumption and possibly shift our sources of energy here. And that gets into production. Chris McConkey has suggested the possibility of, as a nonprofit, getting land for solar that we could then do net metering and possibly pass back and become producers also. In other words, not only protest against fossil fuel, not only divest from fossil fuel, but potentially become producers.
Yeah.
So that's next week, 9 o'clock here. My question though is it possible to focus on this company, take it to their house, not to the facility?
You know, I don't know. That's an interesting strategy idea, and that's something we'll definitely take back to the group. That might be something that we can do. So what you're talking about is actually have a presence within the company, right?
Yeah.
Try to turn the company around. You know,
It'll be much more effective than selling a few of their shares.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you're right with that.
You only have to buy one share.
Get a comment here though from someone who hasn't spoken.
Right. So let's go to you.
Just real quickly, in terms of the extremists, I think it's useful to know that the surrounding municipalities and counties, including all Republican municipalities and counties, some that are all Republican, have come out against this.
Absolutely. Right, yeah, that's a great point.
Except
Schuyler is not, but the surrounding counties and several municipalities, several of which are majority or all Republican, have come out against this.
Yeah, that's a really good point. This is not a partisan issue.
No.
Right.
This is very much bipartisan.
They're very
But
concerned.
this is probably too, to everyone's point, because I'm offline again because the computer someone gave me is broken. Stopping business as usual means that you get your call to your representative and the lobbyists can't get in.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is phone. And if you find out a particular legislative aide's name and direct number, you keep swamping that, so you just don't go to a message, you see. But even a message machine being filled up, they don't want that to happen.
Right.
And a lot of people, even a wine merchant or a hardware store person who's just standing there say, please, just try to make a phone call. You don't have to be afraid. It's easy to just make a phone call and say, this is what you like.
Right.
And if they don't know what you like, then you're going to get something you might not like. But the phone is still one of the best means for us to get the message.
It's actually the most powerful thing when you are reaching out to an elected official. They pay attention more to phone calls than they do to emails.
Yes.
And Gillibrand and Schumer's office were actually picking up the phone with a live person when I called them last week, and they were very interested to know that I was calling because people were getting arrested at this site. They said that they have received many calls and that they are going to look into it. So we need to bombard them with phone calls until they intervene.
And we'll send out all this information. It has the phone numbers on it, and that's really important. Mary, and then I'll go back.
What do you think about the effectiveness of a written letter?
I think a handwritten letter, boy, they love those. They don't get a lot of those, and those do carry a lot of weight. A handwritten letter that is actually signed by a person is really, really great too. Definitely. Yeah.
When's the next protest?
This is
Before people leave.
One second.
Yeah. First of all, thank you. I think you're right on, and I couldn't agree with you more. I'm really worried about this election.
Yes.
I really think if anybody has any contacts with anybody all over, to get them to vote, because ultimately it comes down to the people who get out front and make the appointments and do the other things. And I get concerned about Democrats sort of giving up and not being, forceful enough to get out there and call and do everything they need to do.
Voting is like the most important thing. I do agree with that. I mean, you've got to vote. And I always say this to all my friends: if you don't vote, I don't want to hear you whining. Okay? Because you had a chance and you chose not to participate. Martha, you asked when the next protest
When's
is.
the next?
We're in ongoing actions, and what we're asking people to do now is if they want to participate in one of our actions, to come to one of our training classes. So we will be doing training classes every Thursday night from 6:30 to 8:30, and those will be in Perry City at the Quaker House. You have to register before you can go to the training. And I can send out some information on that if anyone's interested. You have to be known by a current participant before you can come to the training, because we are checking backgrounds on everyone coming in to make sure that we don't have infiltration. We've already had infiltration by the industry, and now we are trying to, we've tightened up the ship a little bit since then. So
These are non-violent, peaceful protests, and we want to make sure that that is the way it stays.
Yes.
What is very powerful and we need right away is intervention from churches. It would be very powerful for the media to photograph standing on the side of love banners and signs at these actions.
Yes.
It's very powerful when clergy gets involved.
Absolutely.
I want to say thanks to Deborah
Thank you very much.
and Joanne.